Our title today is Maduro-left forces sweep Venezuelan elections while US is silent. Notwithstanding US and Western allegations that the Bolivarian government is authoritarian, an overwhelming majority of the dozens of elections held in that country over the past quarter century have constituted an endorsement of the Bolivarian governments. This is also the case with the most recent, held on the 25th of May 2025. These were parliamentary and regional elections for 285 National Assembly deputies, 24 state governors, and 260 regional legislators. The Bolivarian Alliance won 253 of the 285 seats in parliament and all but one of the governorships. And we are told that the Bolivarian forces are heading for an overwhelming victory with 82% of the votes. Of course, Western media, despite these overwhelming results, has continued to gripe about the problems of democracy in Venezuela. It is claimed that turnout was low. In fact, despite the inevitable damage that US and Western illegal sanctions have caused to the government's legitimacy, despite considerable outmigration, despite boycotts by sections of the opposition, turnout was no lower than normal for a non-presidential elections, no lower than a US midterm congressional election. And the Bolivarian government still won 1.3 million more votes than it had before. The Western media also claimed that the opposition was marginalized. If so, it was its own doing. The opposition was divided as never before between those boycotting and those participating in the elections, the latter thanks in no small part to the efforts of the Maduro government to reconcile the opposition, not the act of an authoritarian government. While such attempts at discrediting Venezuelan democracy are routine, one major element of the post-election scene is not, as Arnold August, who first proposed this webinar, will be speaking shortly, has been insisting. It is very interesting to note that the US government, which normally goes on the offensive about democracy in Venezuela after every election, and whose so-called support for democracy is in fact support for authoritarian governments in opposition to democracy. This is the real imperial reality behind the US and the West pretends to favor democracy. We should underline this just in case the carnage in Gaza has not already made this abundantly clear. But this US government, which normally goes on the offensive, has been strangely silent. Why might this be? Well, it seems to me that a number of things are going wrong with their usual anti-democratic game, whose ultimate game, of course, is to get their dirty hands on Venezuela's huge oil reserves and other resources, and to discredit Venezuelan socialism, which still remains something of a beacon to the rest of Latin America and to the world. However, the achievement of the US's aims, the West's aims, has been successfully thwarted by the Venezuelan Bolivarian Revolution for a quarter century. And these attempts may finally be going into reverse. What are the chief signs? Well, there is, of course, the triumphant victory of the Bolivarian forces, notwithstanding intensified promotion of the opposition by the United States. There is the recent exposure of massive US aid to elements of the same opposition. There is the fact that the opposition is now divided over participation, while the Machado faction calls for the forcible overthrow of the Bolivarian government through US military intervention. Two major opposition leaders and former presidential candidates, Enrique Capriles and Henri Falcón, have been elected to parliament. There is also the need, of course, for the United States to step up Venezuelan oil production in order to keep oil prices low and conversely the dollar high. A need that was evidenced by the Biden administration's attempt to negotiate with the Maduro government, which seemed to come otherwise completely out of the blue. There is also the fact that Corina Machado, the opposition leader, openly sympathized with the Trump administration's illegal and brutal deportation of Venezuelans to be thrown into an El Salvadorian prison of ill repute. And there is the simple fact that even the opposition now upholds Venezuela's claim to the Essequibo, which has recently become moot thanks to the discovery of oil and gas, which, of course, the United States has been disputing. Undoubtedly, there are other factors which, of course, our speakers will refer to. So, what is the reality on the ground? How has the Bolivarian government held its own against the capricious, illegal, and murderous sanctions of the US and the West? What is the mood of the people amid all the difficulties they cause? What are the prospects for the future? With us to discuss all of these are 7 observers of the recent elections.
I'm Michael Hudson. I'm appearing here for the International Manifesto group. If you like this video and ones like it, please subscribe. For more information, go to the address on the screen.